Great, 2-minute warning, 2-minute warning. We'll start her up. 20 seconds, 20 seconds. All right, we'll call this general committee meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and sorry for the delay. We apologize, so thank you for your patience. We'll start our meeting with the following land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are in the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. We'll now take 30 seconds to reflect. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem. And the Council for the City of Peterborough recognizes the principles contained in our Constitution and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Adoption of minutes, March 10th and March 20th, 2025, moved by Mayor Leal. Mayor Leal, any comments or questions, errors or omissions? We'll take a vote on those 2 minutes. Take your time. And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Clerk, any disclosure of pecuniary interest?
Here I have Councillor Hakey.
Councillor Hakey?
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I don't have it in front of me, Mr. Clerk. Can I get it read into the record when we do it?
So I think Councillor Hakey, you want to declare on the second item coming out of closed session around the report IPGPL 25-020 as you have a potential client with that.
Yes, he is the client of our firm. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, Councillor Duguay.
That is correct, Mr. Clerk, Mr. Chairman. I have a conflict arising from a matter that was considered at closed session, of which, for the record, I did not attend that session either.
Thank you. And I think that's report LSOCS 25-005. So
Correct.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duguay. All right, we have 2 items coming out of closed session this evening. The first one, that council approve the recommendation outlined in report LSOCS 25-005 dated April 22nd, 2025 of the city solicitor as follows. That staff be directed to proceed as outlined in closed session report LSOCS 25-005 dated April 22nd, 2025 of the city solicitor respecting the Canadian Canoe Museum, Monaghan Romaine site. I have a mover for that. Mayor Leal, any comments or questions? We'll take a vote. And that is carried. Second item coming out of close, that council approve the recommendation outlined in report IPGPL 25-020 dated April 22nd, 2025 of the Commissioner of Infrastructure, Planning and Growth Management and the city solicitor as follows. That staff be directed to proceed as outlined in closed session report IPGPL 020 dated April 22nd, 2025 of the Commissioner of Infrastructure Planning and Growth Management and the City Solicitor with respect to Ontario Land Tribunal Case OLT 25-00051, the Batten White subdivision at 1225, 1261, and 1289 Park Hill Road West. Can I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Baldwin. Any comments or questions? We'll take a vote. And that is carried. All right, we did have a presentation this evening, but MPP Smith sent his regrets, so that presentation will be canceled. We'll move to our consent report. Committee members, let me know if you'd like to speak to any of the following. 13A 2024 investment report. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 13B council compensation review. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Baldwin. 13C U.S. tariff response procurement policy. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 13D Mayor's Housing Task Force for Housing Creation Implementation. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Rill. 13E options to eliminate building heights and angular plane requirements. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Duguay. 13F 2026 Community Wellbeing Fund. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Burke. So up for consent this evening, 13A and 13C, moved by Councillor Vassiliadis. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. So our first committee report this evening, council compensation. Councillor Baldwin.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, first of all, I want to thank Commissioner Freeman for his work in bringing this report forward. And I'm going to move a deferral on this report. I'm not comfortable with some of the comparables that are used in the report. I'd like it to go back to Mr. Freeman to see if we can bring perhaps a few more comparables and have a redo of this and bring it back for council's consideration. So I would move a deferral.
All right, so a deferral is always in order. So moved by Councillor Baldwin to defer back to staff to include a few more additional comparables. Okay, speaking to that deferral, Councillor Rill.
I'd like to call a question.
Okay, so the question has been called. So we will we'll take a vote on calling the question. Just take a second. Yeah, so this vote will be whether we take a vote on the deferral right away or not. Okay, so that is carried. So we'll take a vote on the deferral. So moved by Councillor Baldwin, we'll take a vote on the deferral. All right, that is lost. Did someone want to move anything else? So I think someone will have to move the report. Is that correct, Mr. Clerk? Okay, so moved by Councillor Burke. Moved by Councillor Burke. Any comments or questions? Councillor Duguay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this will be, will be and has been already a sensitive subject with some community members, but not all. I've had opportunity through my own initiative to consider what counselors are paid in other communities beyond those that are referenced. And I also acknowledge that in the report, it's stated that the work of council is considered equivalent to a part-time job, which is frankly, and no offense to Mr. Freeman, but that is not the case. At first, it's not a job. Secondly, it's not part-time. I acknowledge that this council remuneration is not at par with comparable municipalities having comparable and similar responsibilities. The report does structure and offers comparisons, and I think with what Councillor Bald was getting at, we would have probably found more of the same. Probably found that mayors and councillors in medium-sized, small-sized cities, large cities are on as a rule generally paid more than this council's paid. Those are my commentaries, Mr. Chairman. But so just to clarify why I was originally not in support of the deferral. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Duguay. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Belden?
I guess I should speak a little more about it, Mr. Chair. You know, having known or can read the tea leaves here, I think the folks with whom I've had conversation with were somewhat shocked to see the front page of the Peterborough Examiner looking at a 52% increase in pay from the get-go for the next council. I have absolutely no doubt, having done this job for almost 11 years now, that councillors work extremely hard. And the remuneration that's paid from location to location and municipality to municipality has a large range. You know, I did some comparison shopping this afternoon after my meeting with the mayor between 1 and 2:15 today as a part-time councillor. You know, some of them range from in 2023 a low of $26,000 to Clarington, which is $45,000. That's a pretty big range. And I realize some are upper tier, lower tier, and minor. Belleville makes $39,480. So my issue, Mr. Chair, is not with respect to Commissioner Freeman's report that verifies that councillors should be compensated upwardly. My greatest concern is moving to a 75th percentile. I'll give you a perfect example. As a member of Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board, at the time there were 78 school boards in the province of Ontario. And you know where Peterborough teachers were ranked? 78th. We were the worst paid teachers in the province. And of course, then we had a collective agreement that was coming up. And of course, those teachers who were negotiating with the board saw the range that was being paid from board to board and board to board. And lo and behold, the collective agreement, after it was signed, we were the 12th best teaching group in the province. But it didn't take very long when the other school boards did their collective agreements, and the ranking from 12 went down and down and down. So probably at the end of the day, we were in the median of the 50th percentile, which is where I think this council should head. The 50th percentile, I think, is the median, and I think that's where Peterborough fits. And so it's not the fact that I was, in opposition to the recommendations from the councillor. It was getting to the 75th percentile in the first year. So really what I was looking for is for council to have a look at perhaps looking at something in the 50th percentile, which was referenced in Commissioner Freeman's report as well, and then it be staged over a 4-year period of time. But again, Mr. Chair, I read the tea leaves. I won't be supporting the recommendation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Baldwin. Any further comments or questions? Okay, moved by Councillor Burke. We'll take a vote. I think we're just waiting for one more. And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. 13D, Mayor's Housing Task Force, Councillor Duguay.
Chairman, I believe Councillor Riels wanted to speak first, so
Oh, sorry if I missed hands.
thank you.
So Councillor Reel, I apologize. Go ahead.
Through the chair to Mr. Nelson, on page 48, talks about the Planning Act. This statement in here, council may require a person in a public body to file an application under the Planning Act, provide any other information or materials that the council consider it may need, but only if the official plan contains provisions related to that requirement. Does that circumvent any of the powers of council? Like that comment?
Through the chair to Councillor Riel, I'll start, but I'm going to defer to Director Appleby for any subsequent. My knowledge at this point, no, it would not. It would still hold, and that council's position would still be pacted. But again, I'm going to defer to Director Appleby.
Through the chair, I would say no, it doesn't sort of usurp council's power at all. Really what that passage of the legislation is saying is that in order for the city to require studies or things from an applicant during an application, those studies need to be listed in the official plan. And so when council adopted the official plan a few years back, there was a very comprehensive list, as comprehensive as we could get, that was built into the plan to try and cover off as many study possibilities that might come up as possible.
Through the chair, I guess somebody needs to move it, I'll move it, but I want to separate out C and D and speak to them. Okay,
Did you want them separated out for voting as well? Okay.
so C has to do with the sidewalk recommendations. And certainly I do not see anywhere in the recommendation the word accessible. The building of sidewalks on one side of the street prohibits a person with disabilities or of age for purchasing a home. They would probably have to look at it and saying, is this going to impact me anyway? And maybe precludes them from buying that home if it's not accessible for them. The other part is, I think ever since I've been on council, we have debated sidewalks. No sidewalks on one side, sidewalks on the other, on both sides. We have subdivisions here that have no sidewalks. People have to walk on the road. We have put sidewalks in up in the West End when the neighbors came and said that their children were, it was a safety concern. And then in Ashburnham on East Hill, we were going to put sidewalks in, and then the neighborhood was up in arms because what side of the road were you going to put it on, the east or the west? And if you put on one, then people had long laneways, and now they didn't have part of their laneways. They got kids living at home, and the cars are on the street now. So I see the part of the sidewalk part has been a debate ever since I've been on council. So I'm just pulling that out. I know the developers would like not to see any sidewalks, but when I see a subdivision and then we have to go back in 10 years at the expense of the city and put them in when they could have been done in development. Also, I mean, the argument can be made where you put sidewalks in and now you have the cost to the city because we have to plow it or keep it in repair. Well, that's the part of doing business, but that's part of the active transportation plan of people walking, cycling, and on the transit. So that's one point I want to make. On D, the tree bylaw. We have just gone through an ice storm. I'm told, and I cannot say for certain, but I'm told that we lost 30% of our canopy. So I would like to see that part deferred until we do an inventory of what we lost during the ice storm and also the torrential storm that we had of where we are on our tree canopy. So I think D should be deferred until we get a complete inventory of our trees so that we can come back and look at this here. So that's one, defer D. The other one, I guess a vote on the sidewalks, whether you like the way it's written or you don't like the way it's written, but that's the argument that I have. And I've been on council, and I think for 14 years, we've debated sidewalks. So I'll want to leave it to the point. That's okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reel. So we'll continue with discussion, but when the time is right to vote, we'll separate out C and D. C will be an up-down vote and D will be a deferral. Okay. So speaking to the whole report, I have Councillor Duguay, Burke, Hakey, Parnell. Councillor Duguay?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I actually wanted to speak to the 13E. So, and I believe that was an item that I asked to speak to.
I have you for 13E. Right now, we'll stick with 13D, but did you want to speak to 13D?
I would, and I will speak briefly.
Yep.
So I have considered this report, and it was also my pleasure to have served together with Mayor Leal and Councillor Riel and the Mayor's Housing Task Force. And I certainly am familiar with the debates about sidewalks because as the city's planner, that was on again, off again, on again, off again. And from my perspective, it's as far as active transportation and Councillor Riel accessibility, it's important that we have sidewalks on our local streets. With respect to item number D, if I can briefly, in our climate change action plan, one of the big moves spoke to our urban canopy. And I agree with Councillor Riel, we need to get a clear understanding of what this ice storm has meant and whether or not and what funding may be available to assist with tree and urban canopy replenishment and rehabilitation. By otherwise, though, the balance of the report, I certainly support. And I'm in support with Councillor Riel's two requests. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Duguay. I have Councillor Burke, Hakey, Parnell, and LaChica. Councillor Burke?
Thanks, Chair Beamer. And my question through you to staff is about the consultation that was done. And so the working group was made up mostly of the private development community and the mayor and councillors. Is staff sort of using the community improvement plan as the mechanism to sort of get feedback from people that are trying to access housing or from renters on what their concerns and priorities are?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Burke, I'm just trying to clarify the question in terms of, sorry, can you repeat the question?
So I'll walk it back a little bit. So what I've experienced on council is that we have bent over backwards trying to placate to the development community to make things move more quickly and move more easily for them to build because we're desperate for the housing. And being involved in these processes, I'm skeptical that these changes that require a lot of staff time and take down some of the safeguards that we have in planning are going to actually bring us the type of housing that we need. So when we're looking at making these changes or recommendations, I think the one thing that stood out to me was the lack of consultation with people that are trying to access housing, people that are renting, people from the community. And so my question was, as we're looking at making these changes through different plans, is staff relying upon the consultation done through the community improvement plan and the CPPS as the mechanism to hear feedback from community members, from renters, from people that are trying to access housing? Because this was just, this to me, report and these recommendations seem to be entirely informed by the private development community.
Again, through the chair, I'll start and I might defer again to Director Appleby, but through the Mayor's Housing Task Force, yes, there was some developers that were part of that task force and looking at mechanisms and trying to find tools that would aid in the building and development of housing. Some of that did speak to ways of, and again, I think what you're asking about is possible means of finding or building more affordable housing. So in that, it's looking at what is mechanisms or incentives that would aid in helping to deliver on more housing. And this in conjunction with, there was a report last cycle with the Housing Accelerator Fund and some of the initiatives that were related to that, that also spoke to, because they come with definitive timelines, and this is what staff are looking at to and be certain that we can deliver on those initiatives within the timelines that are dictated. And some of that is spoken to in this report to ensure that we're meeting those timelines and that we're being cognizant of ensuring those timelines are met and not possibly overstepping that and burdening ourselves, staff time, can't get to those initiatives that may be more wholesome, as you speak to, and offering some of those initiatives under the HAF funding, but continue to look at this, thus bringing this report and some of the recommendations for subsequent reports.
Yeah, thanks. And through the chair, the point I was trying to make is that we're removing some of the safeguards and the stipulations that make our community a livable, enjoyable space to live. And I have a great fear and concern around that. You know, are we creating the type of city that my children and their children are going to be proud of? And are we supporting the types of projects that are going to be beautiful and lasting and sustainable? And so the answer to those questions to me would come from the very community that has to live here and experience these things that we're talking about changing. So, you know, with the lack of any renters or community members on the task force, how is the city getting the feedback it needs from the community in terms of what's important to them?
Through the chair, again, you are correct. Through the CPPS, there is that feedback. Again, I'm gonna defer to Director Appleby to supplement my comments here.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Through the chair, you know, what I would suggest is in this report, through the Mayor's Housing Task Force, there were a series of recommendations that were essentially approved and direction given to implement back in December. And then there are a series of other recommendations that you know, we were to come back and kind of report on, which is what we're doing here tonight. And when you look at the report in front of you tonight, I think what you'll see for the most part is that each of those sort of items that we're reporting on require further action, right? We're not necessarily solving, you know, any of these issues tonight, but there's a bigger body of work that needs to come still. And those, you know, most of those, depending on the direction that council provides, may require their own consultation in and of itself as those proceed.
Through the chair, and I'll try to wrap it up. So if the consultation that's happening through the CPPS or the CIP, if that comes back to staff that sidewalks are important, that X amount of trees are important, then is that going to sort of trigger anything with these recommendations to shift the approach?
Through the chair, I would suggest that, you know, what we hear through other processes will certainly be good information, you know, for us to use, and will help inform what we do, but it doesn't necessarily replace altogether the consultation that we may want to do for those other individual initiatives, whether it's updating a tree bylaw or updating our sidewalk strategic plan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Burke. I have Councillor Haakey, Parnell, LaChica, and Mayor Leal. Councillor Haakey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question, then comments on this, as I was on the mayor's housing task force also. Okay, thank you very much. For the tree bylaw, which I understand and I agree with Councillor Riel, let's get a count on what we lost. Yeah, I know, you and I, there's something wrong here. The world is Alice in Wonderland Easter, upside down. What happens, the official plan sets the goal of 35% coverage. What happens when we hit that? What happens to the requirement for 3-to-1 trees and all of that? What happens when we hit that requirement? Can somebody tell me?
Commissioner?
Through the chair, Councillor Haakey, I would say that would be a good day. But then if subsequent to that, if we're recognizing and those are measurable milestones that we're meeting, maybe it's something then that we wish to look at, obviously, increasing and witnessing a betterment on that, because it does, that tree canopy does perform a number of benefits for the city, and we've talked of before. And I guess at that point, it would be the condition of re-looking at it and determining, is there a detriment to going to higher numbers, and what is the implications of such. So unfortunately, we're not there yet, but I hear what you're saying, and I don't have a specific dead fast answer at this time.
Fair enough. A couple comments. Sitting on this committee, what it boiled down to, I think, and if I remember correctly, we had Habitat for Humanity. We had a lot of social organizations sitting on there at the time, Councillor Burke, to help you understand. We did have different input, but when we're talking about the regulations, that equals time for the developer, which is a cost. Again, a cost, and a great example is not just the sidewalks, but the curb implementation. How curbs are done typically today is they're poured in one pour, then they get damaged from all the plows, everything, and the contractor is responsible. And what does he do with that cost? He passed it on. So what they did, we didn't recreate the wheel. We just borrowed a wheel from other municipalities that had a two-step process. So you put I guess for lack of a better term, the storm part in, the lower part of it, and then you pour on top of it. Those, do they help the developer? Absolutely, but they also reduce the cost. And I think that's one of the things that we're running up against is the cost of housing. It's not just building it, it's the cost and how we get it down. I think there's a lot of great information in here, and to Director Appleby's point, a lot of it still isn't fully fleshed out yet. So we're coming back, but I think they're very positive for everybody, not just the development community, but for the people that are looking for housing also. That's my comments.
Thank you.
What?
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Haakey. Councillor Parnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be supporting all the recommendations in here, and fully respect and appreciate the comments by Councillor Riel. That's 3 for you tonight. And Councillor Duguay, because as Director Appleby said, most of these recommendations are report back. So the idea is there, we will review them, they will report back on the nuts and bolts of each of these steps. I will speak very quickly to C, which has to do with the sidewalks, because things have changed, evolved a little bit from when I first joined council in 2010. Sidewalks on both sides of the street were the requirement of all new development, with the idea that the city would match up to wherever those were developed. And that was necessary for walkability and accessibility in our city. And it's always difficult if you try to have a sidewalk on one side of the road and not the other. But what has evolved over my time on council is these multi-use trails. So we could have a sidewalk on one side of the street and a multi-use trail on the other. And that way you keep your cyclists and your scooters in one area, your vehicle traffic, your transit on the road, and another side really more directed at pedestrians. So that's a possible configuration. So my question through you, Mr. Chair, to I guess it would Director or Commissioner Nelson, is that going to be a consideration in the report that you will bring back when we look at the sidewalk issue?
Through the chair to Councillor Purnell. Yes, that's always an item that gets looked at even through again, it comes back to possibly looking at the sidewalk strategic plan, because currently it does cite that condition in which sidewalks go in on both sides of every street. It would be looking at from a perspective in which, as you indicated, we have had a number of locations in which, as opposed to the sidewalk, we swap it out with a multi-use path, which still meets currently the intent of the policy. But again, if there's ability or flexibility to look at that, we will definitely entertain that.
Thank you. I don't believe I need a motion, but that'll be a good part of that report. And it's important to note that, we did intend to initially have sidewalks on both sides of the street for new development, as I said, but then for the city to match that up if there was gaps. But since over the last number of years, we have not had any money in the budget to create brand new sidewalks in neighborhoods, in existing neighborhoods. The only sidewalks that are going in right now, which is one of our goals, is to create a more walkable, accessible city. The only ones that are being created right now is if we redo a road, like Brayley as an example. Big roads, we do put the trails and the sidewalks in, or if they're in bad repair and we fix them. But we're essentially not building brand new sidewalks except for those two areas. So I will look forward to that report, but walkability and accessibility are very, very important, and the safety of our citizens who use various modes of transportation, active transportation, et cetera. And yes, I totally agree with the tree bylaw. We need as many helpers as possible to continue to work on our urban forest. We have suffered another very devastating loss. The Dreco was one, and then the ice storm was another. So nobody gets a free pass on that one. We're all going to have to work together throughout the community to replace those trees. Anyway, so I will support, and I'd actually to G, the two-step curb, that one is actually moving forward without a further report, and I support that. So, Mr. Chair, I'll support all the recommendations. I thank the Housing Task Force and the Mayor for their work on this, and I look forward to the further reports coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Purnell. I have Councillor LaChica and then Mayor Leal. Councillor LaChica.
So thank you very much, Chair Beamer. Through you, I just wanted to, thank our Infrastructure Planning and Growth Management Division, and particularly Director Appleby for, prior to December, imparting some of what had been distilled from the Mayor's Task Force. It was an important initiative, and it certainly is something that is going to help us be future prepared. So I thank him and the division for it. At that time, I was not in this division as a liaison. It was prior to our changes in portfolios, but I certainly appreciated what I gleaned and what I gained from the work that was done back then. I just wanted to say that yes, indeed, I support the recommendations, of course. But just that our city initiatives, this one, very important, at a point in time, but just last council meeting, we approved a Climate Action Plan 2.0, and I've been hearing councillors talking about the tree canopy and how we need to assess and analyze and count what we need. We're talking about mitigation and adaptation. So our initiatives can't be created and acted in a vacuum and in a silo. They are laid on top of each other. And I'm excited that our Climate Action Plan 2.0 is going to lay on top of some of the recommendations here in this Mayor's Housing Task Force, the recommendations here, and that Director Appleby said that there will be extensions to what is here. For example, perhaps there'll be an extension based on climate action laying on top of it, that we're incentivizing multi-use unit residential developments, and perhaps they can be EV ready. So maybe that's an extension based on our climate action plan to lower our carbon emissions. Maybe we can include incentives for retrofits. Better Homes Peterborough, some of the retrofitting that we need to do to decrease our residential carbon emissions. You know, things that we can do to scaffold the good work that the Mayor's Task Force has done. We know we need to lay a climate lens over everything that we do, and cross-divisional work needs to be done. And it sounds like that's happening. And I look forward to what Councillor Burke's talking about regarding affordable housing. That has to be happening in accompaniment to this. Our affordable housing strategy, a priority, and incentivizing that and creating a plan going forward that makes sense and is smart and strategic for the city of Peterborough. So thank you very much. I intend to support this motion and for all the good work that's been done. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chika. Mayor Lil.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I often ask myself, what's the role of government? What government should be doing? It's always been my view that government should create the conditions for success. So the recommendations that are in this report and follow up what we approved last December is really an attempt to create conditions for success at the municipal level. We do not control monetary policy in Canada. We do not control tariffs that are being put on goods and services these days, but we really do have an obligation to do what we can do at this level to provide more opportunities for a very progressive development industry to build, and build some more. The other day, I was talking to a young professional, 6-figure salary. In the current situation we're faced with housing, wants to buy a home, can't afford one. Whether it's they can't afford them, there's not enough supply. So we need to do everything we can to break down barriers so we can create more opportunities to build more homes for people. My thinking, Mr. Chair, has also evolved on affordability. I think I said a few weeks ago, we twist ourselves into a pretzel to define what affordability is all about. We clearly are in a situation today where there's two parts of the housing industry, market and non-market. The other day, I just came across an interesting concept that may gain some traction here in Canada, and has certainly be an advocate to provide more non-market housing in this province. There's a concept called that they may want to advocate to have the province and the federal government look at is municipalities having the availability to issue housing bonds to raise capital for housing. And this falls into something that Councillor Riel has talked about. At numerous occasions, Councillor Riel, you've talked about the Peterborough Housing Corporation plan to build all those new units. And the reason they haven't been able to build them, there hasn't been the capital available to do it. So there's increasingly a number of advocates that are looking at municipal bonds to provide that capital so municipalities can build non-market housing. It has also been advocated that interest on these bonds would be tax exempt to make them even more of an incentive for people to get into this market. So these are the innovative ideas that I think we're going to have to start to look at over the next little while to really tackle that non-market area. We've seen innovative ideas. I think we all had the opportunity to read an email from Cheryl Lyon, who has a long and very distinguished career in housing in this community, about innovation, about prefab homes, and all of the above that we're going to have to look at to broaden out this housing sector. And at the end of the day, if we really want to get rid of people in tents, get rid of people in shelters, we got to build various levels of housing in various sectors of the housing market. And that's how we're going to resolve this crisis, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Little. Any comments or questions? Okay, just very quickly, Mayor, thank you for putting this task force together, all your hard work and all the councillors who sat on it and staff. All right, so we will take a vote on A, B, C, E, F, G, H, I, J altogether, and that does not include C and D. So we'll separate those two out. Is that good, Madam Clerk? Okay, so it'll be the first vote moved by Councillor Real. And that is carried. Thank you. So our next item will be C, moved by Councillor Real. Councillor Real, have you, yeah, that's all right. Like, that's okay, that's okay. And that is carried. And then our last item is D, which will be a deferral. Oh, Councillor Duguay?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I conferred with my colleague with respect to the wording, and I think he's agreed. It's just a minor word change. And as printed, it reads that item D be deferred to provide staff an opportunity to complete a tree inventory. And what we're suggesting is adding a comma as a result of the recent ice storm event. We just want to clarify, we're trying to get a handle on what was the impact arising from particularly that major weather event. Thanks.
Sure. So
I believe Councillor Real is agreeable with that wording.
Sure. So Madam Clerk, can we add that in, just comma, due to the ice storm? All right, so the deferral's up. And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. 13E, options to eliminate building heights and angular plane requirements. Councillor Duguay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have had opportunity to discuss this request or this report. And it arose from, this report actually arises from a motion I introduced at a previous council meeting. And I am fully respectful and mindful of the pending community planning permit system, and also associated secondary plans for our strategic growth areas. But to Mayor Leal's point, and to many of my colleagues at these around these chambers and in the community, the limitations that are imposed by building heights as prescribed through our current official plan and the angular plane requirements that are specifically provided for, and I believe OP official plan policies and that of our urban design guidelines are in fact encumbering and limiting development and development yield. And that could in itself complicate our ability to see various forms of housing, multiple units along our major roads, including the potential for affordable housing. And I acknowledge that the community planning permit system is happening, but likely, and I believe what Mr. Appleby has confirmed for my benefit, my understanding, that might be another year and a half away. And again, as we've heard even this evening, the priority to build responsibly, not just build at all costs, but build responsibly and in consideration of such measures, our recent climate change action plan, our urban design guidelines, our other official plan policies. I would, in this report, there's a recommendation that we proceed with the city initiated amendment, which will by its nature ensure that the community is consulted. We can't proceed with an amendment to our own official plan without consultation with our community. So I wanted to speak to the report to to clarify matters, and I believe it is recommendation 2. I believe that's the recommendation that I specifically would be supporting. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman. And I'd also like to thank staff for their production of this report in a timely manner. So to Commissioner Nelson, Director Appleby, and other staff associated with this report, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duguay. So just to be clear, you wanted to move option 2?
I just need to go back to my notes, if I might.
Staff's recommending option 1, which is, so option 2 on page 78 would be immediate official plan amendment.
Mr. Chairman, that is the recommendation that I am supporting.
Okay, so that'll be amendment, right? Mr. Clerk? Okay, so Councillor Duguay, maybe the best option would for you just to vote against the report, which recommends option 1. And if it loses, I'll come back to you to move option 2. Okay, I do need a mover for the report though, moved by Councillor Hakey, so which recommends option 1. So if you oppose that, you'll oppose it like Councillor Duguay. Okay, so speaking to the report, I have Councillor Burke, Reel, and Hakey. Councillor Burke?
Thanks, Chair Beamer. Through you to staff. In terms of the idea of moving towards option two, which is the non-staff recommended option, where tonight we make those immediate changes. Can you help paint the picture for us and those at home, what it would mean for a developer, let's say across the street where it was zoned, or they had the ability to build, 8 stories, but they wanted to go to 15 stories. How much would that, what sort of hoops and timeline would they have to jump through to get that approved currently?
Through the chair, if council were to choose option 2 tonight, it wouldn't really have any practical effect on the ground immediately. What it would do is it would prompt staff to kickstart an official plan amendment process, right? But, someone always has the option to, file on their own as it stands right now, their own official plan amendment and, usually concurrent zoning amendment to seek an approval for a taller building. Right now, not really an issue in the downtown, but maybe out on Lansdowne Street West, right? And that could take, at the quickest, 120 days. That's kind of what it's supposed to take, but in practical terms, it could take, 4 to 6 months.
Thanks. And so what I meant to say was sort of like, I was trying to more deeply understand the point made by the previous speaker, which was that, no, we're not going to wait to do this. We're going to do it tonight. I think my words. And so, and the argument and the reasoning to do so was because we have this need for housing, we have this need for densification, and currently these projects are being blocked because of our height restrictions, right? And so you've just said, in the way that I've heard it, is that if there was a very important project to the community that would be beyond our current height restrictions, that it could still move through the processes that we have to be approved within 120 days.
Through the chair, that would be what sort of the expectation of the legislation, that we try and achieve that timeline. Yes.
Thanks. And so I support the staff recommendation, and I had a good talk with Mr. Appleby today about it. And I take to heart the feedback we got from the community from the last time we heard from the consultant when the height restrictions were discussed. They were given like some options. They were given the current restrictions and given some sort of suggestions about what an increase to those restrictions would look like. And a lot of people in my ward came back very concerned about us making those changes. But the benefit from us going through this process with the consultant, which is what staff is recommending that we continue to do, is that any changes that we make would include a very robust community consultation that would consider building very responsibly as we're looking at these changes. And so it's for that reason that I would like to sort of trust the process that we have in place, the time invested, the money invested, and the community feedback that we have received and that we have yet to receive, which is also including council feedback. We've been responded to by the consultant that they're going to take they're going to hear from each counselor ward by ward. And I think that's an important way to do something like this. And so that's why I support option one, which is basically staff are saying that we're gonna address this issue through the process that we already have in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. Councillor Real.
Chair, to Mr. Nelson or Mr. Appleby, was an architect hired or consulted to give us a perspective of how the heritage and uniqueness of the downtown can be maintained, all the while meeting our housing targets and infill in the downtown? And I ask that question because it's all right to start building, but when you start tearing down our heritage, replacing it with the building, then you lose the heritage or the culture of the downtown. And so if I look at what happened at the Y-Loft, they kept the building facade of itself. I mean, they built in behind, but that is, when you come down George Street and you look at that, you see this iconic building. So was an architect, or is an architect going to be consulted or hired to ensure that we ensure the heritage and what the downtown, the feel of the downtown is like?
Through the chair, when we were writing the official plan, actually, I'll back up. Back in 2018, 2019, we had a 4-day design charrette. That was part of that was to help envision what the city might look like, and we focused on the downtown. We focused on the sort of the corridors going out from downtown, and there were architects who were a part of that process to try and help inform sort of the policies that ultimately got worked into the official plan. And so you'll recall that council had basically received a report from that charrette process and directed staff to use that report as sort of a background or basis for writing, aspects of the official plan. And so that's where that came in. The planning consultant team that we used to help write the official plan also had a number of urban designers on the team and helping form the policies of the official plan. But at the end of the day, when you speak of sort of the downtown character and preserving heritage, really the way the official plan is set up is to try and ensure that there's compatibility that's maintained. There was a specific reference in the plan about preserving views to the clock tower at Charlotte and George Market Hall. And then, a series of robust policies around, how we go about identifying and designating heritage properties and ensuring that development, where you have designated properties, that those properties are kind of respected through the development process. And so that was all built into the policies, which then allows us, when we're considering applications on a 1-by-1 basis, to ask for, various things from the developers, like heritage impact studies, like urban design studies, to be able to do exactly what you're speaking to. And so they would, have architects on their team to be able to provide that opinion to us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Real. Councillor Hakey and then LaChica. Councillor Hakey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just some comments, if I can. I too support the recommendations of option 2 in here. And when you talk with the development community, they talk about the costs. Again, this was one of the things that we covered in the housing task force. Angular plane is very, very expensive. And as was mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago, look at East City with a 6-story build, you can make 10. And it's very cost effective to go high. So removing them, when we talk about not causing time delay, you've got under option 1 automatically 2 reports have to be done, the preliminary directions and recommendations report and fiscal benefit market analysis. The the building community, and I'll use Ashburnham as an example, tremendous downtown builders. They know what they're doing and they know how to do it and they know how fast they can do it. And why can't we speed that up? That's what I think option 2 is speaking to, is that it gives, they're smart and our people are smart, very smart. And they've worked with these people and for lack, I don't even know how to describe it, but you know, the builders that perhaps don't work as well with the city. That's, we know them. Some of us know them for sure. Let's give the ones the opportunity that want to build, and they'll build quick, and they will, and they'll build effectively. They'll build cost effectively. When we were looking at some housing units not that long ago, one of the costs on one side of the equation, if I remember correctly, is $540,000 a unit, and all the private developers could do it for $280,000 to $309,000. That's what we need to let loose here. We need to let the building community. They're not going to build if it doesn't make sense. And I'll use Atria. Atria is still a client of mine, and when they built that, they did work around the existing structure. In hindsight, they do it again, but they do it a bit differently. But they understand the cost of it. It was very, very expensive to accommodate that. But they do it again. That's what he said. They just do it differently. And if we leave them to their own devices, I think you'll find that you get a better product, and they will follow the rules. Mr. Appleby knows all these people for sure. And I'm not really pouring water on option 1, but I think option 2 just again speeds things up. That's what we're talking about, time of the essence, and making it a market that encourages the builders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Chika.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciating the conversation and just some comments. I remember in the last year, there were some excellent presentations at Market Hall reminding us about the importance of intensification in our central area. And we know that that's the smart way. Smart towns, smart cities, we need to build up and not out. And that's how we get building done. And we have a variety of housing for a range of our community. It's cleaner, it's greener, our tax base, it's more concentrated in maintaining our infrastructure over time. It provides much more of that. And we need to be focusing on these things. I appreciate the report and the options that are provided here. Just to the previous speakers, we need to move swiftly. We need to do it in a timely way. However, I don't think we want to go head over feet. We need to make sure, in fact, councillors are having some sessions on the CCP next week. What's stated in option 1, that the report, that it has to do with community consultation and council priorities. And we need to take a beat to make sure we've done that. And I think that's one thing that we're learning over time, that we can't ever compromise on some community consultation and making sure that council priorities have been formed and that we've taken an opportunity, especially with the speed of the legislation. And we do want to move quickly. And that's why I appreciate that option 1 allows for swift, timely, expeditious, an expeditious approach to getting this housing built, urban design guidelines followed, and with a good understanding amongst community and council. So I will not be supporting option 2, and I appreciate the guidance and the recommendation from our city staff for option 1. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Cheek. I have Councillor Burke a second time and Councillor Duguay a second time. Councillor Burke.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Beamer. And I definitely appreciate the comments around the table on this. I think that personally, I'm becoming much more open-minded to this idea from the points that you all are making. And I took something that Councillor Duguay said at a few meetings back, where he said something along the lines of, you probably haven't noticed how many stories or something. So I was in St. Catharines, and it's an example where they have a beautifully historic downtown, but there was this really big condo apartment building there. And I thought of what Councillor Duguay said, and I counted, and I think it was 18 stories. And it fit very well into the rest of the downtown in the city. So I just wanted to say that. And I had some questions to staff about what it would mean for us if we supported option 2. So I'm assuming that if we supported option 2, then a report would come back to us with those changes. And so I'm wondering that if option 2 goes through, is there still the ability to take from the consulting work for the community planning permit system that's being done on this specific issue as part of the broader work, and use it for to help define what would happen if option 2 went ahead?
Through the chair, I think I will start and maybe pass it to Ms. Kimball to wrap up for me here. But the short answer is I think yes. That, what we're hearing through the CPP work could help inform what we're doing. But I think there's probably still a need for sort of additional consultation related specifically to this. But I'll allow Ms. Kimball to maybe add to that.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Burke. So the CPP secondary plan process, we've incorporated in that process analysis from a financial perspective. So Parcel Economics is on board with the project to determine what a pro forma might need to look like in terms of building heights. But we're also looking at, with the CPP bylaws, you know, we will have the options of trading off building height and density potentially for facility services and matters. But we're trying to understand from a financial perspective, from a developer's perspective, what is actually needed to make a project financially viable. So that ties into the building heights that we're going to be proposing as part of the regulations in the bylaw, which will implement the official plan. Taking them out of the official plan, I guess, leaves a bit of a question mark as to sort of what is appropriate. The building heights that are incorporated into the official plan today we're incorporated as a result of a very comprehensive consultation process through the plan. That process of the creation of that official plan took almost 10 years to put together. And, there was a lot of consultation and a lot of work, including the design charrette that Mr. Appleby spoke to earlier, that formed sort of what was appropriate from a building heights perspective. It also set up the urban design policies that we see in our official plan and that are reflected in the urban design guidelines. So all of that is being looked at again through the process of this, a secondary plan for the strategic growth areas, together with the implementation of a new CPPS bylaw. So from our perspective, from a staff's perspective, it is a bit premature to eliminate the building heights today. Not to say that, at the end of this project, it may be appropriate to take them out of the official plan, but we are in the midst of consulting with the community as we speak on that. That's one of the very issues that we are asking for input from the community on. So although it may be the end result, it is something that we're recommending just hold off until we can actually complete this engagement process with the community, understand what those pro formas need to be, even, on behalf of the development community as well.
Thank you so much. And I'll just finish with this. I appreciate the work that was in this staff report, and I think that you laid out pretty clearly in bullet point form the concerns with moving ahead with this on page 80 of our agenda. And so the counter argument to us supporting the staff recommended option is that we need to move more quickly on this. And so we've heard that the quicker option is option 2 because doing everything I can to remember the acronyms, but because I think it's changed a few times, but the CPPS, I think you said the end of next year it would be finished. And so my question is, how long would it take for staff to come back and then implement the non-staff recommended option?
Through the chair, so the CPP is intended to be in place basically 1 year from now, April of 2026. If council were to support option 2 and we launched into an official plan amendment process, that, that will take a few months for us to get back to council. There will be consultation that needs to happen associated with that. So you might be looking at probably Q3 to Q4, somewhere in that range.
Thanks. So I'll just finish. So the point I was trying to make is it seems like there's only about a 6-month window between option 1 and option 2, whereas option 1 takes advantage of the very labor intensive process and consultation that has happened and that is yet to come. Thank you. My time's up.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. I have Councillor DeGay a second time, Councillor Parnell and Mayor Leal. Councillor DeGay.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. If I can remind my colleagues, if we consider the staff report, if we consider page 3 of 10, to be very clear, in our downtown core area, there is no height restriction. That's not being changed. That's not being changed. So that's already allowed for. In the business district, it's already 6 stories, industrial conversion. And so to be clear, what is being asked is not to tinker with what's happening downtown already, but what is necessary from a community development perspective in our strategic growth areas, which are our major infrastructure routes, our major transit routes, and they are already flagged in our official plan. Because if we consider the rest of the table, generally, there are policies written in a different economic climate that doesn't reflect the housing realities we have today. I would like to ask Mr. Appleby or Mrs. Kimball on the missing middle inclusionary housing. What community consultation took place to arrive at, if you could help just refresh my memory and those of my colleagues, what consultation occurred to arrive at the staff recommendation? In a nutshell, if you could summarize.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Duguay. I guess there was a couple of things. The half recommendations or the half initiatives were canvassed through council as part of both the first round and second round of applications. So there would have been opportunity for the public to speak to those initiatives through that. There was also, with respect to the actual zoning bylaw amendment and the related CIP, there was consultation in accordance with the Planning Act. So notice of application was provided to our regular agencies, departments, and anyone who was interested in receiving a copy would have received a copy through request to the city.
Thank you, Mrs. Kimball. So to my colleagues, if I can, that was that missing middle program is a quantum leap. It is a major and fundamental change in the way we as a council, as a community, will be considering and are thus considering our single unit residential properties on a go forward basis. And we've heard from staff, and I'm not wishing to be argumentative, but I'm trying to put this in perspective. It relied upon our consideration of our housing accelerator funds, which the public was aware of, but it didn't necessarily involve extensive community consultation, because that program, our missing middle, which is also aimed at delivering appropriate and responsible housing in response to a housing crisis, did not have what I would consider a consultation process equivalent to what is unfolding with the community planning permit system. Now, relative to my recommendation 2, This is not the first time that the public would hear about and have heard about the notion of reconsidering building height and angular plane. We considered that we had discussion at our urban design guidelines. It was brought up. It's been brought up in previous council meetings. The notion of building heights and its limitations was brought up through the Mayor's Housing Task Force. And the application in a form of official plan amendment will involve public consultation. It requires public consultation. And to Councillor Burke, I know we did the timetable, but it's crucial. We have developers making decisions to invest in our community. They're watching this meeting tonight. And not all developers out there. We have some well-intended, community-minded developers that will rely upon a decision made here tonight. And the 6 months makes a difference. It does from a business perspective. Those are my summary comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor DeGay. Mayor Wheel.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I suspect with an event that will occur next week, April 28th, funding programs from the Government of Canada are going to change dramatically. I would suggest to members of council, read the platforms of the current government and the official opposition. When you go through their housing policies, what are they talking about? The ones that are targeted to the province of Ontario. We're prepared to suggest municipalities reduce their DC charges at half. We'll backfill that amount to make municipalities whole, but there's one condition. Barriers get removed for housing. And they, in their program, for at least those two parties, have said, if there's barriers involved, there won't be funding programs, there won't be support. I think it's a very indicative of the letter we got from the Peterborough and the Kawarthas Home Builders Association. The second paragraph, as the city of Peterborough continues to grow, planning policies must evolve to meet the increasing demand for diverse and affordable housing options. While height and angular plane restrictions were intended to ensure compatibility with surrounding areas, these constraints have become significant barriers to efficient land use and the timely delivery of much needed housing. Mr. Chair, it's not incompatible that you could do public consultation on an OP amendment and the CPP bylaw at the same time. And I remind members of council, just a week or so ago, we passed Climate Change 2. And what did Climate Change 2 tell us? Intensify, intensify, intensify for the good of the climate. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Wheel. Any further comments or questions? All right, so moved by Councillor Hakey and the staff recommendation, which is option 1. And that is lost. So Councillor DeGay, you're going to move option 2.
I would be pleased to, Mr. Chairman.
All right, moved by Councillor DeGay, option 2. Same recommendation, just with the option 2. So same wording with option 2. And that is carried. All right, our final item this evening, 13F 2026 Community Wellbeing Fund. Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. And I'll be very quick to my colleagues. We don't have to belabor this report, but you know, this is sort of a housekeeping item that stemmed from an October 2023 report from Karen Rennie that sort of redefined what these community grants systems would look like. It renamed them and so on. And you know, the thing that I'd like to do is to just defer the decision until feedback can be given from ACAC and relevant city advisory committees. This is something that's being proposed that is affecting these very specific groups, and the city has specific advisory committees that I think should be involved as part of this process, like we've seen APRAC involved in initiatives that are to do with sports. And so it's a very gentle deferral. I've talked with Commissioner Laidman and Mr. Kowalik, and they think that they can easily continue to move forward with the program and get the consultation done in the next month with these groups, and then come back to council with that feedback. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. So sorry, Councillor, it's a deferral. Can you use, or I'll read it. That's right.
I could, yeah, so
Yeah, just the actual wording.
yeah, so I move that report CSD 25-003 be deferred until feedback can be provided by the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee and other relevant city advisory committees. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. So speaking to the deferral, Councillor LaChica.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just to support the motion that was just moved by my elbow partner. I think it's so important that we give our committees the voice they deserve, and that we, have allotted for them as their work to be able to review things. And this advisory committee did not have the opportunity. And so I think a deferral is definitely in order. Many moving parts. We need to make sure that we don't go backwards in terms of sustained funding for the arts. And we also, just a comment about Community Wellbeing Fund. I'm not sure the name of the fund is actually reflective of what it's about, and there's some confusion there. I think it's important that we don't ever bury the arts. We know that sports tourism, sports is in the forefront. We don't want the arts to be buried. And so I think that we need to be mindful of the language we're using for the granting that we have going forward. Thank you for the deferral motion.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chica. Speaking to the deferral, I have Councillor DeGay and then Mayor Leal. Councillor DeGay, deferral.
I'll be quick, Mr. Chairman. I had opportunity to speak to Commissioner Laidman and inquired if a deferral would be would it be impactful, and he confirmed for me that it'd be a matter that could be addressed in a timely manner. So having heard that, I will support the deferral.
Thank you very much, Councillor DeGay. Deferral, Mayor Leal.
Well, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I'll support the deferral. I think Councillors LaChica and Burke have articulated very sound arguments why this should be deferred this time. And I think all members of council also got an email from somebody who's been very involved, particularly in the orchestra business, Catherine Carlton, along with others, and she articulated why deferral would be appropriate. And I'm, Mr. Chair, prepared to support it.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Leal. Further comments or questions? Deferral. Councillor Burke, we'll take a vote. And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. So we have no notice of motion. Other business, Mayor Leal.
Mr. Chair, this is a bit of a sad occasion. This is the last meeting that Sarah McDougall parent will be with us. Sarah's been a tremendous contributor to our staff here in Peterborough. One of the most knowledgeable people that I've had the opportunity to work with in two aspects of my time in public life. Sarah was particularly instrumental after we were told that our first application to HAF was unsuccessful, that she went to work along with our other senior staff and leadership positions to put together the HAF application number 2, which had a very successful reception with the folks in Ottawa, allowing us to secure $10 million and for us to do a number of things that we talked about this evening. So she's going to become a director with Ontario Parks. So I encourage everybody this summer, go to Ontario Parks and you'll see the benefit of Sarah's work providing that camping experience for everyone in the province.
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. Well said. And on behalf of all council, Sarah, all the best, of course. And thanks for everything you've done. So thank you, Mayor Little. Other business, Councillor Crowley?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I just wanted to ask Commissioner Laidman, over the last week, we've all received quite a bit of communication from concerned residents regarding the library and library funding reductions and its impact on library service delivery. And I'm wondering if at some point we could get a staff report that would just sort of outline the current state of library services as it is now, if that's possible.
Yeah, through you, Chair Beamer. There's definitely myself and Ms. McFarland, the People and Culture Director, do intend to provide an update to council over the next few weeks in a matter that you just mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Other business? Motion to adjourn, Councillor Hakey. And just a reminder, we still have a council meeting afterwards. That's going to be really quick. So just a 5-minute break and then we'll go into our council meeting led by the mayor. I think they need 5 minutes to change the technology. 5 minutes? Okay. So 3 minutes, 3 minutes, and we'll go right into city council. So we're in adjournment after Councillor Duguay votes yes. Thanks, everyone.